What's in my Mac dock in 2021? What's on my Mac in general? Are these videos even still relevant in 2021? Regardless, let's take a look. So here we are at my desktop. If you like this wallpaper, I will link it down in the description below because there is usually always someone that does ask for the wallpaper, and quite often that person is me. I've had this in my collection for some time now, quite a few years. It's really nice. I believe it is Belgrade in Serbia. I kind of like the colours and it's just, I don't know, I think it's cool. Right, okay, so let's get started with the dock. Over the years, I've gravitated towards only having the stuff in my dock that I actually use. I used to like just putting everything in my dock and just having loads of icons going all the way across, but over time I preferred the real estate and just less clutter, and I actually keep the dock hidden from view most of the time. But anyway, we have got Finder, which is of course on everybody's Mac dock. Then we have Google Chrome. That is my browser of choice. I'm quite heavily tied into the Google ecosystem just because it's convenient and it works for me. As a backup, I have Safari. Sometimes I run into issues in Google Chrome and I might just want to check it against another browser just to see if I can mimic the same issues or if it's fine. Then we have the calendar. I do use this quite a lot and I've always liked the fact that it displays the actual date as an icon. Then we have Evernote. I use this as my note-taking application. I've used this for several years now. I was turned onto this by a work colleague several years ago who used this to manage work-related things, and then I started using it and I've never looked back. Discord. I am on Discord quite a bit. I'm fairly active on a number of servers. For me, Discord's kind of replaced IRC. I used to be on IRC a lot back in the day. These days you'll more than likely find me on Discord, and I pretty much have this open on my machine at 24/7. Facebook Messenger, much the same thing. I keep this open all the time and use this to chat with friends and family, and I just prefer having a separate client rather than being in the browser all the time. But the way I have these three apps set up is I have a dual monitor configuration. So I have my MacBook Pro on the left, and then I have my 23-inch Samsung display on the right, and I have everything chat related on the left display. Spotify, everyone knows what Spotify is. I can't live without this app. I use it every day without fail. Every single day. I do have a premium subscription, and for me it's worth every penny. There is not a single day that I don't use this app. Then we have Reaper. This is my digital audio workstation of choice. Those of you that know me really well know that I make music. I'm in a band called Zero Mindset, and I also make experimental music of my own, and I also mix music for other clients, and this is the application that I use to do all that in. And I even use it here on YouTube quite often, and I use it to do rough cuts of all my videos and also to edit my audio. Then you've got the default Mac terminal application. I use this quite a bit because I have Brew installed and I've just got a thing for terminal applications. Next to that I have iTerm, which is the one that I've got open here, which is showing BPY top. I've done a video on this and I really like iTerm because it has this borderless option, so it sits really nicely on the desktop. Now I've got VMware Fusion. I use this for virtualization. I've just cleared this out recently because I had a bunch of virtual machines that were really kind of outdated and I couldn't be bothered to go through and update them, so I just deleted them. But I use this quite often for testing. I might test Linux distros with this. I only have one in there currently, which is an old Arch Labs virtual machine, and I'm actually going to be doing a video on that soon. Then we have system preferences, pretty self-explanatory. Next we've got TeamViewer, just a free version here. Sometimes I need to just remote into this machine from other locations, so having this set up is quite handy. QuickTime isn't normally here, but I'm using it right now to capture my desktop. Then of course we have the trash. So that's pretty much it for my dock. Now let's take a look in my applications folder. We've got the applications folder open and I'll go through these with you. To start off, we've got Adobe After Effects CC 2017. I don't use this very often. I have used it in the past to create videos for Zero Mindset. I'm by no means an expert at this application. I have maybe unlocked 0.05% of its potential. This thing's only got an Intel Iris Pro in it, so I can't really use this to its full potential. It struggled a little bit just with the basic stuff that I was doing with it. You got this folder here from Air Music Technology. I'm not too sure what that is, but it will be something music related. I do have a ton of VSTs and plugins installed on this system for all of my music making endeavors. Amped Roots is an amp sim, so that is again something that I would use in Reaper. Then you've got the App Store. I rarely use this and I'm going to do a video on why soon. App Cleaner is my app removal tool of choice. Automator is the built-in Mac application for writing scripts and such, and I have made a couple of scripts with this. Etcher is the tool that I use for making bootable USB sticks for Linux. Books I don't really use very much at all. Caffeine I do use and have used for many years. You can see it up here. I like to keep the system awake as much as possible. Calculator, I use that quite frequently. Calendar we've already been over. Chess, I don't know why that's there. I don't play. I don't even know how to play. Contacts, don't really use that very much. CyberDuck is an FTP client. I don't use it a whole lot these days, but it's handy to have just in case. Dashboard I don't really use. Dictionary I don't really use. I tend to use Google. Discord we've covered. Then we've got DJ Pro 2. I haven't used this one for a while, but sometimes I like to do DJ mixes, and the cool thing about this one is that you can link it to Spotify and pull tracks in from Spotify and mix those. I do have a Korg Nano Control 2 which I have configured to work with this and basically use it as a makeshift DJ mixer. Iosis is again more VST plugins that I use within Reaper. Evernote we've covered. FaceTime I haven't used for a while, but I do sometimes use FaceTime. FB Reader is an ebook and PDF reader, and I use this occasionally. Filters for photos I don't really use. I don't really use the Photos app on here very much. Then we've got Final Cut Pro. I don't know very much about this application. I've just got it, but I'm hoping to learn it and use it for making my YouTube videos. Firefox again, just a backup browser. I don't use this very much. Flux I've used in the past, but just started to use it recently again. I use this to filter out blue light because I'm on the computer quite late at night, and they say that having too much blue light etc is bad for you before you go to bed. I tend to be on the computer before I go to bed. Fontbook and FontForge, something to do with fonts. I don't open them very often. GIMP 2.10, I do use this occasionally for editing images. Gobbler 2 is a downloading tool. I mostly use this for downloading Slate digital products. Google Chrome we've covered. Then we've got Guitar Pro 7. I bought this recently. I don't tend to write tabs in it, but what I do use it for is extracting MIDI data from tabs. Handbrake I use all the time for my YouTube videos. I always run my master export through Handbrake just to compress it and shrink it down a bit, and then the output of that is what I upload to YouTube. HiSuite is for interfacing with my Huawei mobile phone and transferring files. Home, I don't know what that does, whatever it is, I don't use it. iLock License Manager, I do have an iLock USB and that helps me to manage my licenses. I don't necessarily like iLock, but unfortunately a lot of the VST plugins that I use it, so it's kind of a necessary evil. Image capture I don't use. iMovie I use a lot. I've done my last several videos in iMovie. iTurn we've covered. iTunes I do use occasionally. I've got quite a modest iTunes library, but I don't have an Apple Music subscription or anything like that. I use Spotify. Isotope Ozone 7, Isotope Ozone 9, again mastering tools that I would use in Reaper. Joey Sturgis Tones, again more plugins. Kilohertz, more VST plugins. Chord Control Editor, this is for the Nano Control hardware that I have hooked up to my machine. Launchpad, rarely use it. Line 6, again more music plugins. Logic Backup, this is a cool script that I made in Automator, and what this does is this backs up my Logic Pro projects to my external hard drive. Then we've got Logic Pro 10. I mostly use this for MIDI editing because I think the MIDI editor in this is a bit more intuitive than the one in Reaper. I would use Logic Pro full time if I could, but unfortunately it just has some quirks that I just can't really work around, and it just doesn't have the configurability of Reaper in terms of like custom keyboard shortcuts and actions and things like that. If it did, I think I would be using it all the time, but there are just certain areas where for me it kind of falls short and it's a bit janky to use, so I can't fully commit to it. I have mixed a couple of tracks in it and I really enjoyed it, but when you get down to like the audio editing side of things, I don't know, there's a couple of areas where for me it just kind of falls short, and it's just not as quick and as easy to do as it is in Reaper. Loopback, I do use this quite a bit. I use this for routing audio to various places within the computer for YouTube videos and various other things. Max Fan Control, I don't use this very often, but every now and again I fire it up just to check my fan speeds are okay. Mail Client, I don't use this ever. I use Gmail on the web. Maps, don't really use it. Media Human Audio Converter, this is free. I've used this for several years and it converts to and from a number of different audio formats. It's really, really awesome, and I would not be without this. Melodyne, obviously that's for vocal and instrument tuning. Messages, I use this very occasionally. There's a couple of people who have iPhones and I talk to them on there, but very, very occasionally. Facebook Messenger we've covered already. Metadatix, this is a tagging program for MP3s and audio files, and I use this all the time. Minesweeper, I sometimes play this. I'm not very good at it, but when I'm bored it's cool just to pull it up and click around. Mission Control, don't really use it. Native Access, again that's to do with VST plugins and instruments. Same here, Native Instruments. Same here in Neural DSP. News, don't really use it. Notes I use occasionally. Ah, Numi. This is kind of cool, actually. This is like a calculator and converter all in one. It can convert dollars into euros. It can convert inches to centimeters. It can convert tablespoons to pounds. It can pretty much do anything, and it's kind of a handy calculator and utility to have. So I like to keep this around. OBS. I don't really use this. I've played around with it a couple of times, and I can't really get it to do what I want it to do. Although that could just be an error on my part. I'm not too sure, but I'm probably going to uninstall this because I haven't actually found a practical use for it yet. Ocean Audio. I'm not actually sure what this is, so I'm going to click on it. Looks like some really simplified audio player and editor. Yeah, I guess it's... Yeah, it's a really basic audio editor. I guess it's kind of a little bit like Audacity. I guess I thought it looked cool, so I just installed it, but I actually haven't ever used it, so I'm probably going to just remove it. Output Hub, again, that is to do with VSTs. Phoenix, I'm not actually sure what that is. I tried to launch it earlier and it wanted me to do a whole bunch of accessibility settings things, and I was just like, no, I'm really not into that, so I'm probably going to remove it. I don't think I've ever used it, so I don't think I need it. Photo Booth, I don't really use. Photos, I don't really use. Plug is something to do with the Hype Machine, and it's, I think, some kind of music discovery tool. I did click on this earlier, but I hadn't put any credentials into it yet or set it up, so I should maybe look into that and see if it's any good. I do occasionally go on the Hype Machine website and look around for tracks on there, so yeah, maybe this is something that I should be setting up. Then of course you've got Preview, pretty self-explanatory on the Mac. Pulse, again, that is for downloading music products. QuickTime, pretty self-explanatory, we've covered that. Real 8, that is a guitar VST. Remote 64, which is a remote control application for Reaper. I've never ever used it. I don't know how well it works. Then you've got Reader. This is an RSS feed application for grabbing RSS feeds from various websites. I'm just going to double click on this, and as you can see, it does still work. I don't know if RSS feeds are even relevant still in 2021. I'm really not sure. But this does still seem to work, and it's pulling in feeds from websites that I visit. Reference 4 system-wide for Sonarworks. I use this for music making and mixing. This basically corrects my headphones to make them flat. I use Sennheiser HD 280s, and this basically makes the response of those flat, which gives me a more accurate representation of the sound. And having system wide means that when I've got the headphones connected, if I'm listening to Spotify or even YouTube or pretty much anything through this machine, it comes through flat. Reminders I don't use at all. Revolver 4, again, that's another amp sim. S-Gear, I don't really know why I have this on here anymore because Slate Digital stopped their support for this a while ago, so it doesn't actually work. Safari we've covered. Siri, sometimes I use this, not very often really. Slate Audio Center, again, more VST plugins. Slate Digital, same. Sonic Academy, same. Sound Toys, same. Spawn RAM Disk, this is another Automator script. I'm just going to double click this and see if it still works. Oh yes, look at that, it does. Cool. I'm not really too sure if RAM disks are useful, but I just thought it was cool. Spotify we've covered. Steam, I do have a Steam account. I've got a couple of games in it. I'm not really a gamer, so yeah, it's very rare that I load this up, to be honest. Stickies I haven't used in a while, but I actually do use these quite a lot. If there are things that I really do need to remember, then I'm on this machine all the time, so it's handy to have this up and just have the sticky notes up and be able to see the stuff that I need to remember to get done. Stocks I don't really use. Super Tux Kart, I know this is supposed to be a really cool game. It's playable online. Perhaps I should actually start to play it. System preferences we've covered. TeamViewer we've covered. Telegram, I am a member of a few Telegram groups. I haven't loaded it up for a while actually. I need to get back on there and say hello. TextEdit, I use this occasionally. Textual is an IRC client. Again, very occasionally. MIRC is my client of choice, and I have that set up on my ThinkPad in my elementary OS install. THU Slate, again, that's another guitar amp sim, so back to music making. The Unarchiver, pretty self-explanatory archiving tool for zips and RARs and all that kind of thing. Time Machine, I don't really use Time Machine backup, although I probably should. TuneTrack, again, more music making stuff. Transmission, that is my torrent client of choice. Twitterific is my desktop Twitter client of choice, although I haven't loaded this up for some time. Of late, I've just been using Twitter in the browser. Then we've got, of course, a whole bunch of utilities. Most of these come with the Mac. Then we've got Visual Studio Code. I don't do very much in the way of coding, but sometimes if you need to edit a config file or something like that, this is quite handy to have. VLC, this is my video player of choice because it plays pretty much anything. VMware Fusion we've covered. Voice memos I don't really use on here. Waves, again, more more plugins, Wave Central, more music plugins, Western Digital Drive utilities. I don't really use this very often, I just have this because I do have a Western Digital MyBook. There's an uninstaller for it. WhatsApp we've covered. XChat, I don't know why I have two IRC clients on here, but for whatever reason I did install XChat Azure. Zenotic, I think this is pronounced. I was turned onto this by the Linux community. It's kind of a cool FPS game. I've played it a couple of times and it's kind of fun. Ulean Loudness Meter 2, that's to do with audio, and then of course you've got Zoom. I've used this a lot in the past year to be a part of some Linux-based shows. I've also used this quite extensively for work, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty much what I have on this machine. As I say, I keep the dock hidden. I tend to launch a lot of the other apps with Spotlight. We'll just talk a little bit about my base system. This is a MacBook Pro Retina, 15-inch mid-2014 model, so it's now getting on for 7 years old. It's been my main workhorse for the last 6 out of the 7 years that I've had this. Prior to this, I was using a Mac Mini. So am I still running macOS Mojave, because obviously Big Sur is out now and Catalina's been and gone. The main reason is because I make music, VST plugin developers tend to lag behind a little bit in terms of development of software to actually work with macOS. So what happens is updates tend to break a lot of things, and then you have issues with plugins no longer working, and then you have to wait for them to be updated, and you even get cases where some don't get updated at all. And on a production machine like this, that's not really very helpful, and that's not really what I want. So my philosophy is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and Mojave works perfectly well for me, and I know that I can load up my Reaper sessions and I can get my work done, and I'm not going to run into problems with plugins not working and not being compatible and that kind of stuff. So anyway, I think it is time for me to get out of here. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.